we caught a poacher at very close range, and I mean, he must have been 20 to 30 yards from the buffalo. Our main type of poaching here is basically meat poaching. The biggest problem with the poaching is that it's either commercial meat poaching or it's subsistence poaching. But even the subsistence poaching, with the amount of people that live around these hunting areas, is no longer, sustainable. These areas can only sustain very little offtake. A lot of the poaching is being done with homemade muzzleloaders or homemade shotguns. There are a few rifles also, but most of them have been very well used, and rifling doesn't exist in them anymore. And even those rifles that are proper conventional rifles, these poachers have to get in very close. They don't have any telescopic sights. They're using iron sights. And as I said, most of them, the rifling is gone, so they're not very accurate. We caught a poacher at very close range, and I mean, he must have been 20 to 30 yards from the buffalo. And you just didn't take that shot, because of the rifle not being that effective. The muzzleloaders are also very similar. They're not very accurate. They're made by a gunsmith in the village. I've got one or two guys that work for me that have used these because they were poachers. They're missing fingers. One guy's missing an eye because the muzzleloader actually blew up in his face. The powders are made by themselves also. They burn a certain type of tree that's very rich in sulfur. They mix it with either fertilizer or pool acid, the powdered pool acid, with the charcoal that they grind up, and they make it into a powder that they then shoot from these guns. But I mean, there's no real measure of how much. Sometimes they might see a big animal and load it a bit more because they think it'll be more effective, and that's when these accidents happen. So the ammunition that they use for these muzzleloaders, usually they get some lead from a battery and they beat it into a ball. Some use a big ball, one ball to shoot, or others use several lead balls that they've beaten into a round sphere to load in and to shoot at the animals. Then again, we found also rebar that has been cut the length of a normal conventional bullet, and they shove that into the barrel to shoot at the animals. At those close ranges, if they hit it right, even those pieces of rebar will kill or wound the animals, Because we patrol during the day, those people are coming in at night with headlamps, and they will hunt during the night, shoot at any eyes that they see. So it's very indiscriminate. They might even shoot a lion or a leopard, or, they shoot the animal. They recover some of the animals, and they will pack those out to the village before even day breaks. So that's like a hit and run. We have some sort of conventional snaring, which is just that they will put a snare standing up on a pathway with a log attached to it. So the animal will be walking along the path and will walk into that snare around its neck, and it'll tighten, and then they will drag this log around until the poacher actually comes and tracks this animal, and then puts it out of its misery either with a spear or they actually hack them to death with an axe, which is quite brutal. There's a lot of poaching also closer to the villages with the dogs. 2 or 3 people with spears mainly, and they will go out with a pack of dogs, 5 to 10 to 12 dogs like that, and they'll run stuff down. I mean, this area here is especially bad for the baboons. What they'll do is they'll find a troop of baboons and they'll get the dogs to chase them, and they eventually tree the baboons. And if they can't get the baboons down from the tree, they'll chop the big tree down and then spear the baboons when they, fall to the ground. So they do use dogs for baboons. They catch a lot of reedbuck. They catch a lot of warthogs. You see a lot of the dogs in the villages there a bit torn up from warthog and bush pig that will defend themselves. But we do notice quite often when they've been through the dogs, how skittish the animals are. It's a bit like the wild dog packs when they come through. It does affect the game. It makes it very, very skittish. And those guys are just on like a day hunt. They'll come in During the day, hunt a little bit. Once they've got something, they'll disappear back to the villages. But it is a big problem here, hunting with the dogs, and they follow up with the spears. As the season gets drier and water holes get less, the poachers actually use the sacking from the nylon bags that they get here. They weave it into a twine, and then they surround the water hole with snares. So the doves and the francolin and the guinea fowl, when they walk down to the water, actually walk into these snares and get caught. One of the major problems that we do have on these rivers here is also unsustainable fishing. The people come in here and they fish with wrong methods, very small nets. In the swamps that we've got in our western boundary, they're actually using mosquito nets, and those swamps are breeding grounds for the fish. So they're catching the breeding fish, they're catching all the small fry that is our future fish, and it's just getting cleaned up. They're cleaning it all out, and it needs to be controlled. We do have a breeding season that is supposed to be closed to fishing, but it's during the rainy season when there's no presence here. So that does a lot of damage to the rivers and to the swamp, where most of our fish for the Kafue ecosystem is actually bred. During the rainy season, access is very limited here. The poachers have a big advantage because the rivers are full. They use the rivers with canoes, posing as fishermen. They set a lot of snares all along the river, and they catch a lot of small stuff like bushbuck, puku, and impala. And then also the access to the main area. These guys on foot, they can move around how they want to, and they spend weeks at a time in certain areas hunting and drying the meat, and once the meat is dry and they've got enough meat, they carry the meat out. We were operating in another area, which is the next door area, which was Kasonso Busanga, and luckily there, our partner in that area is very dedicated to wildlife. He's a hunter as well, but not a professional hunter, and he actually put a helicopter based in the area to do anti-poaching, which was very, very effective. And that brought the area back in 7 years. It brought it back to what it would have been 20 years ago. I mean, the game numbers have increased incredibly. The poaching has gone down a lot. I would say 70 to 80% of the poaching was cut out. So we're going to be looking to try and do what we did in Kasonso, is try and get some sponsorship to be able to get some fuel for the helicopter, and that would be a big advantage. The helicopter is a fantastic tool. Even during the rainy season, you can patrol really well. You have good visual, and early in the morning and late in the evenings, you can see their fires where they're drying the meat. So you're taken straight to the point where they're collecting all their meat and drying it.